Well, here we are, Phil. 12 out of 12, the final Manx Radio constituency debate. Tonight it was Douglas Central, and we were hosted here at Douglas Yacht Club, which was a last-minute venue change. They've been absolutely wonderful to accommodate us here. The candidates tonight, we have got Damien Chappelli, Anne Corlett, Sarah Hackman and Chris Thomas. What did you make of that?
It was interesting. I think it was. It felt a little flatter than some of the debates we've had. There were some great points put over, some new points, which again, bearing in mind this is the 12th constituency that we've visited, the fact that we're coming up with new ideas, I think that's quite encouraging. Of the candidates, we have a passionate and determined advocate for change in Mr. Chappelli. Anne Corlett, very competent performance, well-considered ideas, not just often, particularly for candidates who've never been in the Keys, there's a temptation to leap to conclusions. I think Anne Corlett was trying to bring back a little bit of reality in there, which I think is important. One
of the things she did say, though, it's one of your pet hates, isn't it, that now she can hit the ground running, but she wouldn't have been able to 5 years ago.
Yeah, it's... She said it in a way which I was able to tolerate, I felt. It's when people say, I've served my apprenticeship, I do get a little bit worried about that. I mean, after a year, if you don't know what you're doing in the Keys, then there's something seriously wrong with you. I will concede that for the first year you probably do need to learn the ropes. Then, of course, Sarah Hackman obviously cares about her community. There's no doubt about that. Obviously, being a representative on Douglas Council for quite some time. And Chris Thomas, great, well-thought-out answers, clearly got an off-the-shelf programme for government waiting for him to get elected to deliver. Sometimes with Chris, you feel as though there's just a little bit too much going on in his head and perhaps a little bit more clarity as to exactly what it means for the people might be useful.
There was an interesting question from the audience about Chief Minister. Do you see Chris Thomas as Chief Minister material?
Well, potentially. It all depends. I mean, there's a sort of a popular view going round that Alf Cannon and Alex Allinson, assuming, of course, they are elected, will batter each other out in the first round, and then as they're lying dazed on the canvas, somebody else will come rising in to provide the new Chief Minister.
I love that image.
Well, yes, and of course that happened. It happened in the Chief Minister election where John Shimon and Steve Roden stood, and ultimately Tony Brown became the Chief Minister because neither Steve nor John were able to get enough votes to get through. But Chris Thomas clearly has a plan. Whether he's as good at communicating his plan as perhaps he would need to be as a Chief Minister, obviously that'll be for the Keys members to decide.
It was an interesting point he made that in his opinion it shouldn't be the MHK who comes second in the constituency who should even be considered for Chief Minister.
Yes, and there's a fair line.
It's not what happened last time.
No, it isn't what happened last time, and it is it's a fair line. I suppose the issue though is just because you're topping polls doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be the best person to be the next Chief Minister. Yeah, I totally get the idea of having a popular vote and being the most popular person. If the public opinion says this person should be the Chief Minister, you'd kind of go with public opinion. However, you could come second in your constituency because you spent a lot of time doing national politics and not pandering to your local community, and yet be very, very popular across the island. So there's a little bit of a conflict in that view.
Interesting choice of the word pandering there, I thought, Phil.
Well, yeah, but it's true. I mean, this is it's a style of politics, and it seems to work for some people.
What I think you can see from this debate tonight is that depending on who wins on Thursday, there are going to be some very different relationships potentially within the Keys.
Yes, undoubtedly. Certainly Damien Chappelli's style It was very, he had some very clear and positive messages, but possibly a little on the aggressive side. I might find that a bit difficult to work with, and presumably he would modify that style if he was elected. Obviously, Anne Corlett and Chris Thomas have got on very well, I think, as constituency MHKs working together, and I'm sure the same with Sarah Hackman. I'm sure she would work well. But in terms of some of the sound bites that I spotted, I really liked the description of a dysfunctional banking system which hampers investment. That was one of Mr. Chappelli's lines. Mrs. Hackman's line of "there's nothing much to do on the island apart from getting drunk or going to the cinema," which again, I mean, the point she was making is, trying to get young people back to the island, which again, was quite a good point. And then Chris Thomas, I thought was quite a well put point about the issue in terms of air routes and hotels and all these sorts of things will resolve themselves if there's a buzz about the island. If people start to get excited about the island, then all the rest follows. Back in the Victorian heyday of tourism, the hotels weren't there to start with. As people became more and more eager to come to the island, more and more facilities were built. So I think there's some great lines. Have I got a good line from Anne Corlett? Yes, I have. Oh yes, Douglas MHKs should get together to lobby for 5-year improvements to roads and pavements. Now that should send a shiver down the spines of the other MHKs. If Douglas MHKs actually started to work together, goodness me, what might happen? That would be a scary thought.
Well, for the final time then, psychic Phil Gawne, I'm going to ask you if you think you could call what is going to happen in this constituency on Thursday right now.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. As I've said in many of these broadcasts, the sitting candidates obviously have a good chance. Mr. Chappelli will be nipping at the heels of the sitting candidates, though. So, we'll see.